Okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Any questions from lesson 14 we covered last week? If you've done the homework, then if we have a little bit of time at the end of class today, we'll look at a few of the questions, and then for the rest of the homework, inshallah, we'll post the answers for you to take a look at online.
I had a question regarding the comparative forms of the weak verbs.
Mm-hmm.
To me, when I was looking at the comparative, it makes sense bigger or smaller, but I didn't understand from just a theoretical point of view, how can there be a comparative verb in usage? Because when you think of like, this stone is bigger than that stone, to me, are we saying that these words, these verbs, how can it be a verb?
Okay, the question is, how can you form a comparative from a verb? The comparative form in Arabic is a noun because it's used as an adjective, and an adjective is a noun. But every comparative is from a root word that is also used as a verb. So in Arabic, when I say something is big, that is a verb. Yakburu, to become big or to be big. Right? Karuma, to be noble. In English, that's not used as a verb. So to be noble, what we say is I am noble. I is a pronoun. Am is a verb. Noble is an adjective. But in Arabic, that would be akrumu, and it's a verb. And the comparative adjective would be akram as a noun, more noble. Right? So kaburta, you became big or you were big. And then akbar, bigger. So it's formed from a verb because in Arabic those adjectives do have a verb form. They're used as verbs. And the comparative form, or af'al al-tafdil, is a noun. And that's why it can take alif lam, it can be mudaf, right? Those are all things that are exclusive to nouns. So when we say it's formed from a verb, that doesn't mean it's a verb by itself. And just as a note, don't get confused between the verb and the noun form. So for example, when I say akbar, that's a noun. Right? Allahu Akbar. This is a mubtada, this is a khabar. God is great or greater. There is also a verb, akburu, right, which is the ana form of the verb yakburu. Right? Yakburu, he is big. Takburu, she is big. Takburu, you, masculine, are big. Takburina, you, feminine, are big. Akburu, nakburu, I am big, we are big. It's not used very commonly in Arabic, but it does exist as a verb form. Right? Normally in Arabic, though, you won't say nakburu, we are big. You will say nahnu kibar, we are big. So it's normally used in Arabic in that form. But there is a verb that does exist. So akburu can be the ana form of the verb, but it's written the same way when it's used as a noun. And make sure you don't get the two confused, right? Same thing with a'zamu. A'zamu means greater. It's not a verb. So let's move to lesson 15 now. Another question, go ahead.
Never have a tendency.
The comparative form, this is back in lesson 14, will never take tanween. It's غير منصرف, right? Because it looks sort of like a verb. The reason why it's confusing with a verb, or it's able to be confused with a verb, is that it sort of has the same pattern that a verb has, but it's not a verb. For that reason, it's غير منصرف. It does not take tanween, right? It can be mudaf, it can have alif lam, and in both of those cases, it will take kasra. But without the alif lam and without the tanween, it won't take a kasra either. That's why we say Allahu Akbaru. You don't say Allahu Akbarun. Allahu Akbaru. It's غير منصرف. It will never take a kasra, right? So you can say بأرحم. If it has the bi, normally it would have it would become majroor and take a kasra. But when it has the غير منصرف, when a word is غير منصرف, it will not take a kasra. So you'll say بأرحم. If it becomes mudaf, then it can take a kasra, right? And so you will say بأرحم الراحمين. بأرحم الراحمين, because arham is mudaf to rahimin, the most merciful of the merciful. Right? Arhamur rahimin, the most merciful of those who are merciful. Rahimin is plural of rahim. And when it's mudaf, it can take a kasra. Any word that is غير منصرف, if it's mudaf, it can take a kasra. Okay, now let's move to lesson 15. And here we're dealing with the fi'l mudari once again, and with verbs that are ajwaf. What is an ajwaf verb? It's a verb that has a weak letter in the middle. So it's 3 letters. The middle letter, the second letter, will be a weak letter. The examples that we have are yaqumu, yakhafu, and yasiru. But we'll go over 3 other examples on the board. If you wish, you can just follow along, or you can write them down, and that'll give you some additional examples in addition to the ones that are in your notes. So if the verb has a waw in the mudari, like yaqumu or yaqulu, then in some cases it will be shortened. And it will be shortened if that middle letter has a sukoon and the letter after it has a sukoon. Whenever there are 2 sukoons in a row and one of them is a weak letter, that weak letter is dropped. So let's look at an example. And just like yaqumu is a very common word, another very common verb that we have is the verb yakunu. So we'll look at the verb yakunu. Yaqulu is also a common verb. Yaqulu is just like yaqumu. Yakunu has the same conjugation as well. So you can look at any one of these verbs to memorize and understand the pattern, and you can apply it to other similar verbs. Yakunu means to be. Yakunu, he is. The dual will be formed with no major changes. Yakunani. So normally you would have yaf'ulu, yakwunu, but that's shortened and made easier to pronounce. Instead of saying yakwuno, we say yakuno. Yakunane is the dual, and the plural is yakununa. So once again, no major changes. For the feminine, hiya, we have takuno, takunane, and then here we have a little bit of a change that needs to take place. We have yaf'ulna, and so we'd expect yakun and then na. This is not the verb, so don't write it. This is what you'd expect, right? Yakun, yaf'ul, na. Yakun, na. But what's the problem? We have a sukun on the waw and a sukun on the noon. We can't have two sukuns. So what we do is we yakunna, we drop the waw, and then it becomes yakunna. We write it once with a shadda. Then we have the anta, the second person, so we have takuno, takunane. These are all regular with no changes. Right? Antuma, takunane, takununa. Feminine, taku, this is a waw, takunina. Takunane, and then takunna, the same change takes place. Akuno and nakuno.
This is like saying I am.
Akuno I am, nakuno we are, or we will be. In some cases, the mudari' form will have not a waw in the middle letter, but it will be an alif. The example you have in your notes is the verb yakhafu. It's originally a waw, but in the mudari', instead of saying yakhufu, we say yakhafu. Question?
Just in terms of usage, because like you said, to be normal, you say akam. So when do you use it? You wouldn't say
Akuno is used.
You wouldn't say akuno akam.
Akuno is used, or yakuno is used with adjectives. So you can say, for example,
Can't you say ana something?
you can say, for example, ana jaya, I am hungry. And you can say akuno jaya. That would mean that, for example, I will be hungry. You can say sofa akuno jai'an, I shall be hungry.
More for the future.
It can be used for the future. It can also be used to say sometimes. So sometimes you will say, for example, yakuno dhalika. That does take place. That sometimes is. So it's used for different meanings other than simply saying a subject and a predicate with no verb. The usages are somewhat different from how you would use a pronoun or a demonstrative pronoun with an adjective, or a simple verb like ya'dhumu, yakrumu. So, you'll see examples of how they're used, and we'll see some examples, not necessarily in this lesson, but in future lessons in classical Arabic, and then you'll get a sense of how the usage is different. So that was the example that we had for the fi'l mudari' with a waw. Let's look at one fi'l mudari' with an alif. Right? In some cases, you will find an alif. Because it's Friday night, and I know none of us is liable to fall asleep, we'll use the verb nama yanamu, which means to sleep. Nama yanamu. The masdar is noam. Noam means sleep. Another masdar actually is also manam. The verb form in the madi is nama, just like qala. In the mudari it's yanamu. The middle letter is an alif. Right? There's an alif. So it'll start out yanamu. Next, yanamani, yanamuna. Right? So far, nothing out of the ordinary. Feminine, she sleeps, tanamu. Tanamani. And then yanamna. Then the anta form, you sleep, tanamu, tanamane, tanamuna. The anti feminine form, tanamina, you sleep, tanamane, tanamna, tanamna, and then it will be in the first person anamu and nanamu. The only ones that are changed is yanamna and tanamna. They're shortened. There's no alif. That alif that we saw here, that alif is dropped. That extra alif, tanamu, yanamu, it becomes yanamna. Because if we want to say yaf'alna, we would have yanamna. Right? Yanamna. And we can't have a sukoon on the alif, sukoon on the mim. So we shorten it by dropping the alif. And we get yanamna. So if you remember that you can never have a sequence of two sukoons, yanamna, tanamna, that just cannot exist in Arabic, then you'll drop it. You'll always drop the weak letter, which is the first one. Questions?
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
You know, in the Quran, a lot of things like yahad, boom, like, you know, that type of, where there's a shadda after a long lift. Isn't that two sukoons?
There is one exception to that rule that I just mentioned about the two sukoons not existing in a row, and that exception is if there is a letter with idgham within one word. So if there is a waw or a ya or an alif followed by a shadda, a letter with a shadda on it, within one word, that is okay. And the example is in Surah Fatiha, الضالين. So here we have an alif, which is a sukoon, followed by a lam, which has a shadda. That shadda is a sukoon. But that's okay. And it becomes a mad, and it's stretched extra long. That's where you have the longest mad in tajweed. So you will say الضالين because there is two sukoons in a row. That can happen with an alif. It can also happen with a waw or with a ya. But it has to be within one word. الضالين is within one word. And it can only happen if the second letter that has a sukoon is a letter with a shadda that has gone through with idgham. But any other time when you just have not a shadda and idgham, but just a simple sukoon, it has to be dropped. It won't be written and it won't be pronounced. It'll be dropped. And the example that we had in our notes, yakhafu, the feminine plural is not yakhafna, but it's changed to yakhafna. Right? Because just the alif is dropped. So it's yakhafna. The alif is dropped, it becomes yakhafna. And if it's not a waw or an alif, then it will be a ya. The example in your notes is yasiru. You can conjugate the word yabi'u, which means to sell. Yabi'u, he sells. Yabi'ane, and then the plural will be yabi'una. The feminine form will be tabi'u. Tabi'ane, and then we'd expect tabi'na, but the ya will be dropped and it would be tabi'na, yabi'na. So we'd expect yabi'na, but it becomes yabi'na. And then the anta will be tabi'u again. Tabi'ane, tabi'una. The anti form will be tabi'ina. Tabi'ane, tabi'na, and then abi'u, nabi'u, nabi'u. So that's something that you just have to memorize. And by now, inshallah, if you have the basic form for the mudari' memorized, yaktubu, yaktubani, yaktubuna, and so on, then the small changes that exist in these forms will be very easy to remember. Any questions? All right, let's move on. Now we're on lesson 15. You're about, actually a little bit more than 1/3 of the way through the book. Which means that by now it would be good to learn how to count to 10, right? At the very least, when you're 1/3 of the way through learning a language, you should expect to be able to count to 10. That's what we're going to be able to do by the end of today's lesson, inshallah. Within the next hour, inshallah, you will be able to do so. But don't think it's going to be very easy. Because in Arabic, they have made every effort possible to make sure that you're not going to learn to count to 10 and think it should be a piece of cake. It should take some effort. Let's start by learning the numbers. There are 2 sets of numbers that we have to learn. For masculine and for feminine. And if you're thinking that starts to sound like it's going to introduce a complication, it's even more interesting than you think. We'll begin by just learning the numbers that you use to count, right? So not if you're counting, 3 books or 3 apples or 3 pens, but you just want to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. If you're doing that, these are the numbers that you will use. Wahid for 1. Ithnan for ithnain. Thalatha. Arba'a. Khamsa. Sitta. سبعة ثمانية تسعة عشرة. واحد اثنان, and the other form will be اثنين if it's majrur or mansub. ثلاثة أربعة خمسة ستة سبعة ثمانية. There's no shadda on the ya, so it's not ثمانية, it's ثمانية. تسعة عشرة. Now those of the forms that you see with the ta, each of them has a form without the ta as well. But here's where it gets interesting. From the numbers 3 to 10, these numbers, 3 to 10, if the thing that you are counting is masculine, the number will have a ta. In all cases, if the thing that you are counting is masculine, the number will have a ta. It will seem like it's a feminine number. And if the thing that you are counting is feminine, then the number will be without the ta. Right? So it'll look like it's masculine. It's the opposite. It's opposite. It's a little bit strange, but it's not only Arabic. Other languages related to Arabic, which are known as the Semitic languages, most of them have this feature. So this wasn't just the Arabs deciding to make their language complicated. It was the whole Semitic region. The whole family of languages, they were all in it together. The wisdom behind it might be that if the noun is feminine, it usually will have a ta, So if you also use a ta in the number, then it gets a little bit longer. So they switch it around. I don't know if that's the reason or not.
Everything else agrees.
Generally, adjectives will agree, but here they will not agree. They will be the opposite. Now, what's also interesting, though, is that the noun will be in the plural, because obviously from 3 to 10, it's a plural that you're counting. But to find out whether you are to use the masculine or the feminine form of the number, you will have to first mentally think, what is the singular of that noun? And then if the singular is masculine, you will use the feminine number. And if the singular is feminine, you will use the masculine number.
Or you look at the singular.
You look at the singular.
The plurals automatically.
Because the plural sometimes may not always be obvious. You know, whether it has a ta or whether it doesn't have a ta. So for example, right, the word mudun. Mudun is the plural of Medina. Medina is masculine or feminine? Feminine. Mudun does not really look very feminine. There's no ta. But because the singular is feminine, will we say thalathatu mudun, or will we say thalathu mudun? We'll say this one, not that one. Why? Because mudun, the singular is feminine, so we'll use the masculine verb, the masculine noun, the masculine number. Mudun is not غير منصرف. No. So you'll say ثلاث مدن. It'll be إضافة. ثلاث مدن.
Is that idafa?
There's
Not
إضافة.
an adjective?
No, it's not an adjective.
So numbers in Arabic are not considered adjectives.
Generally, it's used as an إضافة. ثلاث مدن. Not all numbers. 3 to 10. Like I said, counting to 10 is not going to be just a matter of taking off, biting a piece of
It's
cake.
considered mudaf ilayh.
It's مضاف مضاف إليه. ثلاث
English, you
مدن.
wouldn't consider that possessive.
It's not possessive,
More
but it is an
just-
إضافة. It's just the usage. Now, the word kutub looks a lot like mudun, right? Mudun, kutub, same pattern. But the singular for kutub is kitab. And in this case, is it masculine or feminine? Masculine. So with kitab, we will say thalathatu kutubin. It will have thalathatu with the feminine form because the noun is masculine. See how that works? It's sort of like saying 3 of books, but it means 3 books. Now, with number 1 and number 2, you generally will not need the number at all, because every noun in Arabic, if it's singular or if it's dual, it's already obvious whether it's 1 or 2 or not. But you can use wahid and ithnan sort of for emphasis. So you will use it as an adjective. You'll say kitabun wahidun, or you will say madinatun wahidatun. You will say kitabani ithnani, or say, for example, madinatani ithna Tane.
So 1 and 2 are basically like
1 and 2 will be adjectives and they will agree with the noun. They refer to just like any other adjective.
and if it's like al-kitab, will it be al-wahid? Like,
Al-kitab al-wahid. But you don't need wahid or ithnan because kitabun by itself means one book and kitabane means two books. So if you use ithnane, it's a little bit of emphasis. Otherwise, just saying kitabane by itself, it means two books. Right? Of course, you can also say kitabaine if it's mansub or majrur.
beyond 10?
Let's learn to count to 10, and we'll worry about what comes after 10 afterwards. Those are compound numbers which have additional details. So let's go through the notes. Wahid functions as a regular adjective. Waladun wahid, bintun wahidatun. Ithnan can be used as an adjective, and it's used primarily for emphasis. Waladani ithnan, waladaini ithnain, bintani ithnatani, bintain ithnataini. And that first hamza in ithnani is hamzat wasl, so it'll be dropped when you read. So you won't say bintani ithnatani, you'll say bintan ithnatani. The hamza will be dropped. You can say, for example, قال الإثنان, the two said. So it corresponds to how a pronoun would be used in English. Ithnane in Arabic will never be a pronoun. So in the book where it says that the numbers can sometimes be used as a pronoun, what it means is that where a pronoun would be used in English, the Arabic number can be used in the corresponding place. Otherwise, in Arabic, the number ithnane will never be a pronoun. The word thamaniya is like the word qadin or hadin. It ends with a weak letter. What that means is that if you're describing a masculine noun, you will say thamaniyatu kutubin, for example. Thamaniyatu kutubin. If you're describing a feminine noun, then it would be thaman, right? Thamanin, like we say hadin. And if there is idafa, then the ya will reappear. So you will say thamani mudunin. Because when there is idafa, you can't have a tanween. When the tanween drops, that missing ya returns. So you'll say thamani mudunin, thamaniyatu kutubin. Just remember that. You don't need to know why. But with a masculine noun, it will be thamaniyatu blank. With a feminine noun, it will be thamani blank. And one other note, the word ashara, if it has a ta, you will pronounce it asharatun. If it has no ta, you won't say ashar, you will say ashr. So be aware of the change in pronunciation.
Is that
Ashru, ashru mudunin, for example. So you'll say ashr with a feminine noun, and then asharatu with a masculine noun. That's number 10. The number 10. Right, now that's for saying 10 cities, 10 books, so on and so forth. What if you want to say the 10 cities or the 10 books? In that case, the example we have in our notes is 6. You can say al-mudunu as-sitt and use it as an adjective. You can say as-sittul mudun.
So in the second case, it's
Either one can be used when it's definite. You can say as-sittul mudun, or you can say al-mudun as-sitt. In this case, it's an adjective. You can also say sittul mudune.
so that's weird.
Yes, it's a little bit odd, but that's just the way it's used.
So that's kind of like an idafa, but you can have an al before the first.
It's an idafa, sittul mudune.
You can have an alifam for the mudaf.
For this one?
The last one, yeah. Because the second one is the same.
Yes,
thing.
it's the last one. When they're both definite and the number comes first, as-sittul mudun, it's like an idafa with an alif lam in the mudaf, which is unusual.
Impossible.
It's not impossible. There are other examples as well.
So what's the difference? Why would you use one versus the other?
They can all be used.
It's just
It's just preference, pretty much. And then we have examples from the Quran. There are many numbers that are used in the Quran, and that's good practice for how to use them correctly. A few verses are mentioned at the bottom of page 3 and on page 4. I'm not going to go over all of the grammar of the entire sentence because there are some verb forms and other grammar points that we haven't covered yet. But just for the numbers. The first verse, لا تتخذوا إلهين اثنين. Don't take two gods. إلهين اثنين. It's mansub. Taking two gods. إنما هو إله واحد. It is only one God. إله واحد. One God. Next one. هو الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة. The word nafs in Arabic is feminine. That's why wahidatin is feminine. Wahida agrees with the noun. In this case, nafs is feminine and therefore wahida is also feminine. In the sentence above, ilahun wahidun, ilah is masculine, that's why wahidun is masculine. The next sentence, ayatuka an la tukallim. It's Allah is short for an la. An la tukallim an-nasa thalatha layalin sawiya. Thalatha layalin. Layalin or layali is the plural of layla, which is feminine. The word laylatun is feminine. That's why we use thala. Thalatha in this case, because it's a mansub. Kuntum azwajan thalathatan. Azwaj is the plural of zawj, pair. Right? You are three pairs or three groups, and zawj is masculine, so thalathatan is with the ta. Shahadatu ahadihim arba'u shahadatin. Arba'u shahadatin. Shahadat is the plural of shahada. Shahada is feminine, and therefore arba'u is used without the ta. قال خذ or فخذ أربعة من الطير. طير, bird, is masculine, so it's خذ أربعة. خذ means take. So take 4 من الطير of birds.
The number appears after.
The number in that sentence أزواجا ثلاثة appears after the noun. That's also used in some cases. You can say ثلاثة أزواج or أزواجا ثلاثة. That's also an acceptable usage. The next ayah, يمددكم ربكم بخمسة آلاف. Now آلاف means thousands. It's the plural of alf. And alf is masculine, so we will say خمسة آلاف. So the number 5,000 is just like anything else that we're counting. If I say خمسة كتب, we're counting 5 books. If I say خمسة آلاف, we're counting 5,000s. In English, we don't say 5,000s. We say 5,000. But in Arabic, you will say 5,000s. Like saying 5 books, 5 schools, 5 buildings, 5,000s. And 1,000 is masculine, so khamsat will take the ta. In the next verse, هو الذي خلق السماوات والأرض في ستة أيام. Ayyam is the plural of yawm, which is masculine. So sittat will be with the ta. قل من رب السماوات السبع. Here again the number comes after the noun. Samawat is the plural of as-sama, and sama is feminine. So we'll say as-samawat as-sab'. The next verse, فَصِيَامُ ثَلَاثَةِ أَيَّامٍ. Right? Ayyam is the plural of yawm, so ثَلَاثَةِ أَيَّامٍ. فِي الْحَجِّ, right? If you don't find a sacrifice, then you will fast 3 days during Hajj, وَسَبْعَةٍ إِذَا رَجَعْتُمْ, and 7 when you return. سَبْعَةٍ is referring to the same ayyam. That's why it has a ta. Right? Sab'atin is the same as saying sab'ati ayyamin. But it's understood that we're talking about days. 3 days in Hajj and then 7 when you return. So that 7 means 7 days. And then tilka asharatun kamilatun. That is a complete 10. Asharatun. Why asharatun and not ashrun? Again, because it's referring to days. Next is in the story of Prophet Musa alayhi salam. Shu'aib alayhi salam said to him, قال إني أريد أن أنكحك إحدى ابنتي هاتين على أن تأجرني 8 حجج. Hijaj is the plural of hijjah, which is feminine. Hijjah, and that's year, because you do Hajj once a year. Right, so 8 hijaj is 8 years. فَإِنْ أَتْمَمْتَ عَشْرًا. And if you complete 10, Ashran is referring to Ashra hijaj. So again, it's without the ta. So we have Thamaniya and we have Ashran. Both of them are without the ta. Because the word hijjatun, that is feminine. For 7 we have سخرها عليهم 7 ليال. Layal is the plural of Layla. Because Laylatun is feminine, Sab' will be without the ta. You see that? But then Thamaniyata Ayyam. Ayyam is the plural of Yawm, which is masculine. That's why Thamaniya has the ta. So Sab'a layalin, 7 nights, wa thamaniyata azwaj, and 8 days. We have tis'un wa tis'una na'jatan. Tis'un means 90. So it's tis'un wa tis'una, 9 and 90, meaning 99. Na'jatan, sheep. Wali na'jatun wahidatun. And I have 1. وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا مُوسَى 9 آيَاتٍ. Ayah is feminine, so tis' will be without the ta. 9 ayat. Next verse is about the challenge of the Quran that if you don't think it's from God, then try to forge 10 chapters like it. فَأْتُوا بِعَشْرِ سُوَرٍ. Surah is feminine, so Ashr is without the ta. The next verse is a number that it's not actually a number, but it's used like those numbers from 3 to 10. The word bid' in Arabic, it means some odd number. So فَلَبِثَ فِي السِّجْنِ بِضْعَ سِنِينَ. He stayed in the prison بِضْعَ سِنِينَ, some odd years, meaning somewhere between 3 and 10. And sinin is the plural of sanatun. Sanatun, which is feminine. So bid' here is used without the ta. Sanawat is also used. Next sentence is from Ziyarat al-Nahiya. لا إله إلا الله رب السماوات السبع والأراضين السبع. Aradin is the plural of ard, and ard is also feminine. That's why it's as-sab'. Sama and ard are both feminine. And the remaining sentences are not from the Quran, but they're just sample sentences for the usage of the numbers. The first sentence, كتبت 3 رسائل إلى أختي. I wrote 3 letters. Rasail is the plural of risala. It's feminine. So the word thalath will be without the ta. In the next sentence, we have قرأت أختي رسائلي. My sister read my letters. رسائلي. Now, رسائلي is ma'rifah because the letters of me. Right? It's رسائلي, my letters. That's a definite noun. مضاف مضاف إليه. And because rasa'ili, which is mudhaf mudhaf ilayh, is definite, when thalath comes after it as an adjective, it has to be definite. So we'll say rasa'ili ath-thalath, my 3 letters. You see why that is? Because rasa'ili is definite, so ath-thalath will also have to be definite. Or instead of saying my 3 letters, if you want to say she read the 3 letters, you will say قرأت أختي الرسائل الثلاث, the 3 letters. That's also definite. And then أكلت فاطمة ثلاث تمرات. Fatima ate 3 dates. Tamarat is the plural of tamratun. Tamratun is feminine, so thalath has no ta. And أكلت فاطمة ثلاثة من التمر. She ate 3 from the dates. That's also another way to say the same sentence. Question? It's feminine because tamarat is plural of tamratun. You can use either one. If you use tamratun, then it will be feminine. The difference is this. The word tamratun in Arabic means a single date, 1 date. Tamratani is 2 dates. Tamarat is several dates. The word tamrun in Arabic, which is masculine, just means the category of dates. It might be 1, it might be many, but it's dates as a category. And that's very common in Arabic. Tufahatun, 1 apple. Tufah, apples, is a category. So you'll say, for example, أكلت ثلاثة من التفاح. I ate 3 of the apple. Of the apples. Not of a specific number of apples, but of this category of apples. So you can use the masculine form, which is a collective noun, or you can use the feminine form, which is, counting 1 date, 2 dates, 3 dates. And that's used with many different types of nouns in Arabic, where you add a ta to say 1. That's why the min is there. Because when you have that collective noun, you add a min, that it's of this category. Thalathan min at-tamr. In the verse of Quran, if you look at the example on the previous page for number 4, Surah 2, verse 260. قَالَ فَخُذْ أَرْبَعَةً مِنَ الطَّيْرِ. Take 4 of the birds. الطَّيْر is also a collective name.
Nouns are usually
the collective nouns, we'll talk about it in more detail in a future lesson. There's different types. But in general, the form without the ta refers to the category. And then if it has a ta, like tufahatun, tamratun, then it means 1 single apple or date or whatever it is.
Well, I was just thinking from lesson 1 or 2 when we talked about collective nations.
No, that's different. Like a country will be feminine, yes. So Syria is feminine, or Iran is feminine, with some exceptions. Any questions? If there are no questions, then we can recite salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa alihi. And that'll conclude the class for today. We're not going to have the tamreens to go over, but inshallah take a look at them if you haven't for lesson 14 and now for lesson 15 as well. And inshallah I will send you the answers, and I will also email you if we will have some time for people to come here and practice as a group. Yes? Yes, we will go over dictionaries as well.